Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Enrique Hasso. I'm the Director of TMDSAS in Community Engagement with the Texas Health Education Service in Austin, Texas. And joining me today, we have two really wonderful guests that are here to join us and share a little bit about what TMDSAS is, what we do around here, and directly to your phone or your computer, we have some of the best STAR advisors here in the state of Texas. So Jane and Todd, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Enrique.
I'm going to allow each of you a little bit to introduce yourself to folks who may not know you. So, Ms. Lynn, would you mind starting off? And then Mr. Lang, we'll go with you.
Sure. I'm Jen Lin. I'm the Assistant Director of the Pre-Health Studies at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. And I work with B2B students, Baylor GEMP students, and run the Baylor Pre-Health Committee process.
All right. Thank you.
And I'm Todd Lang. I'm the Assistant Dean of Health Professions at the University of North Texas in Denton. And I primarily work with anyone who wants to go into the health professions after they graduate from UNT. And I also serve as the JAMP Faculty Director.
All right. Thank you both so much for joining us today. As we do these workshops, we recognize that a lot of applicants might not necessarily know where to even get started with applying to dental, medical, podiatry, or veterinary school here in Texas. So we thought we'd have this session as just kind of a quick orientation for you. So we have some questions ready to go here, but of course, this is an open forum. If you have any questions where you're watching us from, please feel free to drop them in the comments, and we'll make sure that Ms. Lynn and Mr. Lang are able to answer those. So first off, we're going to start with our wishing question. What do you wish your students better understood about the TMDSAS application process? And this is open to either of you.
Well, I wish they would know that how long it is going into it. It's a lot longer than everyone realizes. And I've noticed over the years that my students are pretty perfectionists. And so if they don't prepare ahead of time and they see this long application, they're going to delay the application because they want to make it perfect. And if you delay your application too far, it's going to really hurt you in the long run. So my recommendation is to start taking a look at the application early to know how to prepare for it because of how long it is. And my general advice is try to work on your essays now so that all the 3 essays for TMDSAS are done by May 1st before it opens.
Okay. And I wish the students understand that TMDSAS website provides very useful information. And it is important to utilize the resources provided by the TMDSAS website, especially the TMDSAS office hours. I feel like they are underutilizing those resources, and I wish they will go on the website and find all the useful information on your website.
Well, thank you, Jane, for that plug on the office hours. We'll make sure to Venmo you your $20 bribe later. Yeah, that's a wonderful resource that we have available to applicants, and we do try here at TMDSAS to make sure that we're here every step of the way with our applicants and make sure that you have all the support that you need. And just as Mr. Lang mentioned, you can start working on your essays. There are so many things that you can start working on right now by just going to tmdsas.com and looking at the application guide. We'll be sharing a link right now so you can take a look at some of those essay topics that you can start working on right now, even though the application won't open until May 1st. So onward to our next question. Which parts of the application process do your students typically find the most confusing or the most stressful?
Well, for our students, it's entering coursework because of how detailed you have to make it, as well as some of my students get confused on how to identify what's actually considered healthcare experience versus non-healthcare experience. So I have a lot of students who will wonder if like their hospice volunteering is considered healthcare experience. So that's just one example of how they get confused. Entering an accurate number of hours for an experience that may not be consistent. So like if you're doing something every other summer, trying to figure out how to enter the number of hours for something that has a gap in between it. And then the residency, determining if you're a resident for Texas, sometimes that can be very confusing for a lot of students.
Yes, agree. Everything he just said.
Perfect. And again, on that application guide, we do try to be as transparent as possible with policies and state laws regulating residency determinations. With our coursework and entering coursework, we will be having a session on how to enter your coursework. So those of you watching right now and ready to join us on this series, go ahead and start looking at requesting your official transcripts. You definitely are going to need those when you start your TMDSAS application, but make sure that you wait to submit your application until your spring grades are received. And we'll go over entering coursework at a later session. So that is definitely a couple of areas that we definitely receive a lot of feedback on our end. And of course, the feedback that we receive from applicants helps make TMDSAS better every cycle. So Texas is huge. I don't know if you both were aware, and where Texas has 16 different medical schools, 4 dental schools. I added 10 out of nowhere there. We have 2 veterinary schools, the podiatry school. It's a lot to work through. So the next question here is, for somebody who's looking at applying this year, how do applicants know when to submit for TMDSAS or an AMCAS or a COMAS?
Jane, did you want to go first this time, or do you?
Sure.
Okay, go for it.
So every year on May 1st and 2nd, I have a application workshop that for our students. And so during those 2 workshops, I will talk about the different application services and then help them and go through the application services with them. And that's what I do. Yes.
So I think for me, I think it all comes down to whether or not you're a Texas resident. So if you are a Texas resident, I usually recommend filling out the TMDSAS application first and then considering AMCAS and a COMAS afterwards, because if you get the TMDSAS application turned in as soon as possible as a Texas resident, then all that's out of the way if you're primarily wanting to stay in Texas. And then while you're waiting for the TMDSAS application to process, that's when you can start filling out your AMCAS or a COMAS application service, so that once TMDSAS does finish verifying and processing everything, it's sent to your schools, and then you can start receiving secondary applications. And so once you start receiving those secondary applications, hopefully by that time, you're done with AMCAS or a COMAS, so that you're kind of just swapping back and forth. So once you start finishing off some secondaries for TMDSAS, AMCAS or a COMAS is finishing up their processing, and then you're starting to receive secondaries from them. And so it kind of just keeps everything spaced out a little bit to where you're not too stressed out. The big thing is try to make sure your summer is not too consumed by a lot of stuff, so that you can spend a lot of time filling out the applications. And when you're looking at, if you're a resident in Texas and you're looking out of state through AMCAS and a COMAS, a lot of my students are asking, which ones do I select? And so it kind of just comes down to what you're okay with in terms of where you're going to move to. One thing I tell my students to look at is the in-state versus out-of-state acceptance rate. So if you're looking at a school that accepts a large portion of their class from their in-state, then you may want to be careful. You may want to dig a little bit deeper into your stats and compare those with the schools that you're applying to. Another thing I would look at is if the private schools out of state, they will primarily pull students from their out of state. Not always, but we've seen a lot of times where their class size is mainly dominated by students that came from out of their state. So you might have a greater chance for a private school, depending on the school, especially if you're not too worried about the tuition. If the tuition for a private school is lining up for what you would pay for an out-of-state public institution, then it may be a little bit easier to get into a private school. So those are some of the tips that I usually tell students when they start looking at schools that are part of a state that they're not a resident. So it just kind of depends on the person, but that's what I would go with right now.
Lots of considerations. And I think one of the key ones is with TMDSAS. The schools that do participate in TMDSAS will only accept applications through TMDSAS. Likewise, with TCU, the Burnett School of Medicine will only accept applications through MCAS, and University of Incarnate Word will only accept applications through ACOMAS.
And
Yes.
also, I during my workshop at the beginning of May, I always show them the MSAR, the medical school admissions requirements, and then I will go through the MSAR with them, and then help them pick the schools they want to apply to, and so they know which services they need to use.
Yes, let me go ahead and drop a link to the MSAR here. That is a really helpful tool for any applicant to medical school. And similarly, there are similar tools for veterinary dental programs across the country, hosted by the national associations. And these are medical school admissions requirements, dental school admissions requirements for that respective program, and it helps show you essentially the statistics of applicants applying to those schools. It shows you secondary application requirements, as Mr. Lang was mentioning. If there are any situation judgment tests like Casper or Duet or Preview, that's available on there. And I would be remiss to say that TMDSAS also publishes data available on our homepage. And through these data, you can actually see the global trends of where applicants are for dental applicants or medical applicants. And so we're going to drop a link here as well for TMDSAS data reports. And you can take a look at essentially where you land in terms of your metrics, and kind of see where you, as the funnel of admissions gets narrower and narrower, where applicants apply, get interviewed, get accepted, matriculate to the schools. You can see how the different metrics change for the pool. This is a helpful way for you to kind of gauge whether you are going to have to retake an MCAT or a DAT. Maybe you may have to, pursue additional education opportunities to strengthen your application, or if you are, in terms of metrics, ready to go and ready to submit your application. And again, our advisors like Ms. Lynn and Mr. Lang here are ready to answer any questions and ready to customize your journey. This is the value of the advisor at your school. And so if you haven't visited with your health professions advisor, it is currently March 25th, and we are about 5 weeks away from the opening of the application. This is definitely the time to go in, sign up for these workshops that are being hosted at these schools, and get additional information to make sure that you're well supported throughout your application process. Well, since we've tackled the easy questions now, I thought I'd throw in one easier question. Hey, what's the TMDSAS match?
Oh, gosh. Jane, do you want to take this, or do you want me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can all tag team this one if you all want as well.
You should take it.
So the TMDSAS match is, I don't know how it works. So Enrique can kind of talk about that, but it's basically you're rating all the schools that you interviewed with, and those particular schools are ranking you. And then this special algorithm determines if you match at a specific institution. And if you do, then that's where you're going. But I feel like I'm missing a lot, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this topic.
No, I think you nailed it. Yeah. Jane, did you want to add to that?
Same as what he said.
Yeah. So yeah, basically that is how the TMDSAS match works. It is the process for accepting applicants that are medical applicants and are Texas residents. So if you're a dental applicant, this does not apply to you. If you are not a Texas resident, this does not apply to you. But for those that are Texas resident medical school applicants, at the schools where you will interview, those will show up on a list in your application later in the cycle. And then you will go in and rank the schools 1 through however many you interviewed at. And the schools will rank applicants one through however many they interviewed, and basically we'll put them into the big fancy algorithm, as Mr. Lang mentioned, and produce a match. We actually had our TMDSAS match about a month ago for this past application cycle. What the match does is it does fill all of the classes in mid-February, which is really helpful for you to know where you're going. But also, we do see a lot of movement that happens after the fact. If you are curious to learn more about the match, as Ms. Lynn mentioned earlier, we do have office hour sessions around the match. We do have a match video that goes through a couple of different scenarios. But we do know that this is a question that a lot of applicants ask very early in the cycle. There's a lot of curiosity around it. We do have resources for it, and just wanted to build some space here to make sure that we address that burning question. Because we just keep getting easier and easier questions. We do have this hot potato, hot button issue of technologies like AI and virtual advising tools. Can you all share a little bit about how you all have been working with applicants and using AI in an ethical sense? And before you do answer, I do want to mention that we are currently working on some additional guidance with TMDSAS to make sure that we have solid guidance about the ethical use of AI within your application. We recognize that it's a very helpful tool. It's a very helpful tool for making sure that you have feedback, for making sure that you have editing capabilities. However, we do ask to maintain the integrity of the application process by making sure that you're not just copying and pasting directly from AI platforms, but rather using AI as an extension to be able to tell your story. You know, just as if you hired a private consultant to write your essays, or if you did other support services to help you write different aspects of your application, you would want to make sure that it's your voice and your stories coming through. And so that's how we are essentially looking at AI from the TMDSAS perspective. But I'm curious, Jane, Todd, if you have similar advice or any insights on how to use AI ethically in the application process.
Yes, I agree with all you said. And I also tell students they need to be cautious in using the advices generated by virtual advising tools or AI, because sometimes you don't get the accurate information. For example, I have tests on Siri several times and then I got wrong answer. Mm-hmm. So I just want to make sure they are getting the correct answer and don't rely on AI or virtual advising tools 100%.
Yeah, I personally think there's nothing better than just meeting one-on-one with somebody who can kind of give you some additional advice outside of AI. I think AI is just, it's a little impersonal, obviously. And so I typically tell students, if you want to use it to kind of help you understand how to restructure a sentence or edit for grammar and punctuation, I think it's fine and safe, but I wouldn't use it too much because it won't sound like a human being at some point. And so if you're wanting to know if something is presented correctly in an essay or even in a description of one of your experiences, I would have a real person look at it and give you some insight that the AI may not be taking into consideration. It's just, like I said, it's too impersonal. So only use it for maybe a little bit of editing and then go from there.
Yeah, I think these are very helpful insights. And like I mentioned, it's a hot button issue right now. And so, we definitely don't want to discourage the use of it, but there's definitely a line there. Yeah, thank you so much for that. We're gonna take a little breather because I know I've been asking back-to-back tough questions here. And we mentioned earlier a little bit about our reapplicants, folks that perhaps didn't get into the professional school of their choice in a previous cycle, perhaps this past cycle. What's your approach to helping out these reapplicants? What should they be looking at?
I first and foremost say do not copy and paste your essays. Whatever you do, you definitely need to rewrite them. Obviously, for a personal statement, your motivation doesn't really change. And so most of your personal statement might remain the same in terms of content, but it definitely needs to be noticeably updated, maybe summarized a bit. And what the schools typically tell us is that they want the students to be able to talk about what they did over the past year to improve their application. So if you do plan on reapplying, don't just use the same essays, rewrite the personal statement, but for the other two, you can actually use different topics to address those questions. So that's what I tell my students is use a completely different topic for the personal characteristics and optional essay if you can. The other thing I usually talk about is, again, make sure that you talk about what you did in the gap year, because if you pretty much use the same information as last year's application, that's not going to impress them. So as many changes as you possibly can, and some of it will actually roll over from the previous cycle, but you don't want to just rely upon that, make changes where they need to be, and make sure you go through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure you don't miss something. But Jane, did you have anything to add on that?
Exactly what you said. And also, sometimes I do work with students one-on-one. I will look over their application and to see if they made some major mistake or what they need to do during their gap year. Most of the time it's because of their MCAT score. And so that one is easy to fix the MCAT score. They just need to study more. But some of them, they have the score, they have the MCAT score, they have the GPA, and then when they are not getting into medical school the first time, we will look at their application and see if there's some major mistakes in their application.
Yeah, and we actually do a yearly survey of all of our applicants, and we have identified that over 85% will identify some issue with their application as they're reviewing it. Before you even hit submit, if you go to the payment page, you're about to submit the application and there's no way back. But before you go forward on that, there is an option for you to download a PDF version of it. You're welcome to go to FedEx or Staples, print out a copy of it, look over your application, look over your essays, make sure everything looks accurate, and then go ahead and submit your application. Again, 85% of folks hit submit, paid their fee, and then later notice that there was an issue. But once you hit submit on your application, the vast majority of it is no longer editable. So that fine-tooth comb search through the application and making sure everything is correct cannot be emphasized hard enough. Well, and again, the feedback that you're hearing right now is very typical of what you would receive in a one-on-one session with your health professions advisor. If you're not aware of who your health professions advisor is at your school, or if you don't currently attend the school or don't have access to advising services, we're dropping a link here to the National Association of Advisors for the Health Professions. This link shows you both who the current advisor is at your school, or will connect you with a volunteer advisor that can help provide similar feedback in a more customized manner. And again, this is very important for your overall journey because, I mean, you're hearing the feedback that we're getting right now. We're only 25 minutes into this session, and we could probably already write a book. So Roy would like for us to continue on that front, and he's asking, can the application be submitted before we get our MCAT score back for those testing in late April? So for those of you unfamiliar with the MCAT does take up to 4 weeks to process your score and make it available to you. So I know we got the visual confirmation of yes, but would you mind going a little bit more into that? I know, Todd, you also went into a little bit into the timing of your application. Can you share some insights on that?
Yeah, if you're taking it in late April, you're kind of in a unique position where if you would like to wait until you see the score, I would say you're fine because you'll get your score back in late May. And I typically tell my students to try to submit their primary TMDSAS application by late May, first week of June. That'll be considered pretty early. You don't have to submit it the day it opens if you don't want to. Now, if you're taking the MCAT maybe in June or July, I would consider submitting the TMDSAS in late May, early June, and then waiting for your score to come in afterwards. Because if you wait too long on the application, the processing time could take weeks, and that's going to delay the application being sent to your schools and then you receiving the secondaries. So even though you're kind of going in blind, it may be a good idea to submit early, no matter what, whether you have the score or not, if you're wanting to make sure that you're early in the process.
Agree.
Excellent advice. All right. And we've got one more question here from Dr. Sudarshan. Remind applicants that they need to release MCAT score to TMDSAS. It doesn't go to TMDSAS automatically. Great point.
Yes.
We will be discussing this in a later session of this workshop about releasing your scores, releasing letters of evaluation, and that is a very important point. So thank you very much for bringing that up. Roham, I've already taken my DAT, but was not happy with the score. I'm retaking it mid-June. Should I submit my application before I take the DAT? I think that's exactly what Todd mentioned earlier.
And keep in mind that you'll be taking it with the new scoring system. So you won't get your score back until July. Mm-hmm. But with dental, it's a little bit different. I'd say it's you can submit it a little bit later than what med schools do. So I'd say you'd be fine in submitting it in June and getting your score back in July after it's begun processing.
Perfect. Yeah, and just to make sure that you all have these dates on your calendar, the application will open for entry year 2026 on May 1st. And the first day you can submit your applications will be May 15th. The application deadline this cycle is October 1st for dental and medical applicants. And it will be the last Friday of August for veterinary applicants. So we are now, we've completed our list of questions. I'll let you all breathe, but first I want to give you a space to share kind of some good advice for applicants that you might want to share. Jane, you want to kick us off here?
Sure. So if your pre-health office have any kind of workshops to help you with your application, make sure that you attend the workshop sponsored by your pre-health office, and read the emails that your pre-health advisors send you, and also utilize the TMDSAS website with all the useful resources.
It's another $20 for your shout out, Jane. Thank you.
I would say kind of what I said earlier is start taking a look at the prompts for your essays, because that tends to give my students the biggest concern and fear, because a lot of my students don't like to write. And so it takes them a lot longer to put their thoughts together and design an essay that they're pleased with. So if you can get that off your plate early on, that's going to help you. And then I would study the application guide that TMDSAS has on their website. It's very user-friendly, and it will divide everything up based on section. So you can break out like an Excel spreadsheet and start filling in the information that you can begin to expect when you fill out the application. That way you're ahead. And then I would just sit down and start building out your timeline. I would say do it with your pre-health advisor. They can kind of give you some things that you may not be aware of, like when to submit your letters of recommendation, when to take the Casper exam based on the schools that require it, and how all this lines up with the secondaries and the interview season, and just to maximize your chances of getting in that cycle so that you don't slip here and there. So that would be my advice early on.
Excellent. Thank you both so much again for your time, and thank you for joining us today and some excellent discussion questions for us. And we'll see you on Thursday at 1 p.m. We'll be taking a look at the other side with some of our medical school deans. So until then, we'll see you. And thank you all so much again for joining.
Bye.